Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to the Toronto Raptors 121-119 loss to the Houston Rockets. Ryker, this game ended up with a 2-point game somehow, but the Rockets really handed it to the Raptors last night.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of take this game two ways, right? One way is that they got absolutely demolished. I'm sure if you were watching the game, then you might have turned it off in the fourth quarter when it seemed like all hope was lost. And, the other perspective is that the Raptors really showed something that they're not known for showing, and coming back in this game, making late game threes of all things, and really having the opportunity to win it. So there's two sides, but before we get into it, start the podcast with the comment of the day, eh? And this one from Twitter, the Claw. He's an all-star, and that's a good point to a starting lineup, of course. And it's a good point to start off this podcast with the way that he played tonight. And we noticed that there's been a lot of feedback that's critical of Kawhi Leonard, and he actually played a fantastic game tonight. He had the opportunity to win it, so let's talk a little bit about him.
Yeah, Kawhi Leonard, 32 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals for Kawhi tonight. Phenomenal game, scoring efficiency. He did have a few turnovers, which I think frustrated people a lot, and also missed that game-winning shot, and unfortunately it was a airball fashion, but he came out, especially led that charge back. The Raptors had a couple times where they made runs in this game to cut it closer to the Houston Rockets, and Kawhi Leonard was a huge part of those stretches where we were coming back in this game. Obviously, the Houston Rockets played a phenomenal all-around team game. Obviously, James Harden didn't have the biggest night as of late. Still 35 points, but that's a poor game for James Harden.
Yeah, that's a poor game for James.
Yeah, but they came out and they played such an all-around team effort. Kenneth Free, PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon were playing out of their minds. And, Kawhi Leonard did all he could to bring back this team. And down the stretch, he was hitting shot after shot after shot, leading the way along with Danny Green and Pascal Siakam. So I'm not disappointed at all. The comment of the day, he's an all-star starter. He's playing like it. Obviously, he's coming off a bunch of games of rest. So he came out primed, ready to go. I was happy with what I saw from Kawhi. Cut down the turnovers a little bit, but that's, he's has the ball in his hands most
He still
of the time.
shot 50% from three. He shot, I think, what was it on the night? He was over 50%.
3 for 6.
Yeah, but just total field goals.
11 for 19 from the field.
So over 50%. Playing out of his mind. Little point of worry, I guess, for a lot of Raptors fans with speculation now of what his intentions are next year, of course, now with the news being that he purchased a big mansion in California. So
I feel like we can make a whole video of that, because that mansion is 3 hours away from the Staples Center, I believe. 2.5 hours.
But at the same time, he also bought a property in Toronto, so it's certainly right. We can make a podcast about that. But he was out there giving no real signs. I don't think that he's not interested in the least playing his hardest for the Raptors this season, right? That's the one thing that we can certainly take away. But you did mention it was an all-around game for the Houston Rockets. That's certainly you said it yourself the last podcast. We got to keep James Harden under 50 points, right? And that we achieved that. However, it was the other guys tonight that really had a big role. PJ Tucker playing like, you miss him immensely on the Raptors. He was a player last season for the Toronto Raptors.
A couple seasons ago now.
Oh, gosh, I still feel like I can remember
Time's
him.
flying by, right?
I love PJ Tucker. He's a favorite. Eric Gordon had himself a nice game. Kenneth Farid, who, weird story in the NBA, getting thinking that he deserves certain roles on teams, getting cut by a couple teams, now finally ending up back as a starter. They took it to the Raptors. The Raptors had no team answer. They could shut down Harden, but they couldn't do it for the rest of the squad.
Yeah, the game plan made sense, because the Houston Rockets have been a one-man show, especially since Chris Paul's went out, and rarely you see the rest of the roster step up. Obviously, Kenneth Farid, now they just signed him, and he's been a huge factor so obviously, we probably should have focused on him more. He had 21 points and 14 rebounds, but yeah, James Harden had 35 points, and 7 assists, but he shot 9 of 25 from the field, 2 of 13 from 3. Danny Green did a phenomenal job when he was switched on to James Harden tonight, and when he was guarding him most of the game. And Danny Green, defensively kept Harden contained. 35 points for Harden as of late. He's averaging, I think, 35 points. So that's a calm game for James Harden. But Danny Green did it on the defensive end, and 22 points for Danny. 6 of 10 from the three-point line. We mentioned it at the end of the game, was just splashing them left, right, and center. What were your thoughts on Danny Green in this one?
Danny Green turned into the player that I expected that he could be. Like you said, 22 points, but crazy 3-point shooting and defense. And really that's all we need him to be is a 3-and-D guy. And that's what had me so excited initially when the very first news of the trade was...
Well, we made a video. We said he was the steal of the offseason.
Exactly. He was the steal of the offseason. And this is the reason, because he has this potential to be this player consistently, not necessarily through the regular season, because you're not going to need him to elevate his game, right? Like, you're always going to have Kawhi Leonard probably guarding the best player. Not tonight, of course, because they wanted to save him for offense. And then Pascal Siakam is going to guard maybe the best 3 to 5, whoever that is, right? Yep. So Danny Green is never going to need to be guarding the best player in the regular season, because the games aren't important enough. But he's a playoff player. And this just goes to show what impact he can have on the game. And we'll make the argument now in a little bit later into this podcast that if we had Kyle Lowry show up, then this would have been maybe easy game for the Toronto Raptors. If not, they would have come away, with a close margin victory. And a lot of that would be certainly attributed to Danny Green, because he did it on both ends, right? He shut down James Harden for the most part. He kept James Harden to an atrocious 3-point percentage, and also had a lot of really critical baskets for the Raptors.
For sure. Danny Green, he's been... I'd argue more so, because you've kind of debated that he's been inconsistent from the 3-point line, but we know what to expect out of Danny Green. He's going to hit most of his shots, and especially down the stretch, it's not going to waver. We saw it tonight. He was... At the end of the game, he really got fired up, which is, the big struggle with a lot of 3-and-D guys. They get in their head during big moments. Danny Green shows up in big moments, and you mentioned it. During the playoffs, I think he's going to be a phenomenal piece, because it's all big moments in the playoffs. So I'm really happy what I saw with Danny Green tonight. And to keep it positive, before we start bagging into players, Pascal Siakam,
Yeah.
Especially the way Kyle Lowry's been playing, the Toronto Raptors should have 2 All-Stars. Whether we're first or second in the Eastern Conference or wherever we end up, I think we've played at a level, especially with all the injuries and all that, where we deserve 2 All-Stars. And, I said it at the hot takes at the beginning of the season. I thought Pascal Siakam could become an All-Star this season. And, with Kyle Lowry's struggles, I think it's undoubted. And this might be up for debate. Let me know in the comment section below. But Pascal Siakam deserves an All-Star nod over Kyle Lowry this year. I'm not necessarily saying he's a better player just yet, especially when Kyle Lowry's healthy, but he deserves the All-Star nod over Kyle Lowry this season.
I would go as far to say he's a better player right now than Kyle Lowry is, certainly.
I disagree with that. Kyle Lowry's still a multi-time All-Star. He's been banged up.
We do need to make a podcast on this as well, because we have a lot of, of course, with the way the All-Star voting works out, that the players and coaches have a percentage, 25, I think, and then the media has 25.
Yeah, well, that's for the starters. I think
but
the league executives.
There was obviously some snubs. Luka Doncic and D Rose almost leading all voting, not even in there, and different players stepping up. Anthony Davis being so. Anyways, we can talk about the Raptors and everything. I certainly agree. The point about Pascal Siakam, he's a player. Even the ESPN reporters. This is a game that wasn't, at least the feed that I was watching, wasn't covered by TSN, and they were saying if Pascal Siakam's not most improved player, then they would be surprised. So even people that aren't probably watching the Raptors on a consistent basis are still respecting that Pascal Siakam has kind of come out of nowhere and elevated this game.
22 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists for Pascal tonight.
60% shooting.
Phenomenal
2 of 2 from 3. Yep. From 3, man.
Yep.
This is what we said.
Clutch threes.
Big 3. Yeah, there was 3 consecutive threes at the end of the game. It was Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam. Brought it close, brought within 2, and couldn't capitalize. But yeah.
And then one more positive before we start bagging into people. Norman Powell also, in my opinion, had a phenomenal game last night. 10 points, 3 assists. Ever since he's come back from injury, he's had a phenomenal impact on pretty well every game he's played in. He's been efficient. He's been slashing. He hasn't been making dumb decisions. My question to you is, do you think Norman Powell deserves a bigger role tonight? And, DeLon Wright got a DNP with coach's decision. All those minutes were given to CJ and Norm, especially where CJ has been better as of late, but I'd still rather see DeLon Wright on the court. But do you think Norman Powell should get an elevated role within this roster? Only 20 minutes for him tonight, but he's been looking very good.
Well, I just want to say, even the point about DeLon and CJ is worth talking about, because CJ Moss has been playing pretty good, and they needed an offensive spark, right? And some 3-point shooting. Not there last night, but you have a team that plays incredibly small in the Houston Rockets, right? Incredibly small. Their starting center was Kenneth Faried, who's barely a power forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they still don't think that DeLon Wright is reasonable to put out there. I mean, I understand that they want more shooting, and that's kind of the way that the game transpired in the end. That's how they brought it back, was through 3-point shooting. But it's like, you don't need a bigger body in CJ Miles. You can put out DeLon Wright, for gosh sake. He's been although he's had his struggles as well. But
one question. Yeah, one question for you, because obviously I agree with you 100%. DeLon Wright would have made sense, and even in the games we played against the Rockets last year, DeLon Wright usually has strong games against the Houston Rockets, as you mentioned. They're a smaller lineup, all that sort of stuff. Do you think this possibly means there's a trade coming? You know, the trade deadline's coming up soon. DeLon Wright's a restricted free agent at the end of the summer, so he's probably looking for a bigger contract, and we have a lot of guys coming off the books next year that we really want to re-sign. Do you think Masai Ujiri could possibly be, you know, with the resurgence of Norm,
it's possible,
maybe in the works for a trade for DeLon Wright?
I mean, you know who's selling right now? We have the Atlanta Hawks are certainly selling. We have the Memphis Grizzlies. I would be shocked if they don't make a trade by the trade deadline. Their team is doing horrible. I don't understand why they're holding on to any of their players like they are. They're constantly making excuses. You know, the Washington Wizards is shopping. Everyone's on the table. Same thing with the Washington Wizards. I would assume now they're probably actually looking into making a team around Bradley Beal. I'd say guys like Otto Porter Jr. and you know, everybody else on that team is probably being shopped as well. It wouldn't surprise me to see if Masai Ujiri, I mean, with a couple of losses now, right? A couple of losses against Boston Celtics, against the Pacers, against the Rockets. These are all teams in the playoffs, all close L's, right? It just goes to show that there is maybe another piece that the Raptors need to acquire if they want to make that playoff push for the championship this season. So especially now with, you know, any more rumors articulating with Kawhi Leonard, I would be surprised if Masai Ujiri is not thinking, what else can we do to make this team better right now, right? Not for the future. What can we do for the right now? But yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. And then on your point about Norman Powell, I think that he's been deserving. He's finally Norm God. He's he played good defense. He shot confidently, 50% from the field and from three. I don't think he needs more than 20 minutes per game. I don't think he was almost the highest used player off the bench this game. So I think his role right now, and like we said, what do we want from him? 10 to 15 points. Less than 10 would be a disappointing night for Norman Powell, I think. More than 15 is like, all right, slow down there, buddy. Yeah, what are you trying to prove? You're not the sixth man of the year. You know, you can calm yourself. But I don't know. I think I like what I'm seeing from Norman Powell right now. I really do. Yeah,
it's a weird switch up before we swing into the segments. But it's a weird switch up. If you told me last season, because at least for the last month it's been this case. You know, if you told me last season that Norm would be our consistent guy off the bench while Fred VanVleet would be having up and down games, I would have told you you're crazy. But I also would have told you you're crazy if I told you Serge Ibaka was having a phenomenal all-star bounce back whatever season. Yeah. So lots of crazy stuff happening with the Toronto Raptors this year, but we're running long, so let's swing it straight into the segments. Tonight, the Kawhi you doing like that play of the day. You know, there's a couple it could definitely go to at the end. You know, we could give it to all those threes, that crazy run that Danny Green went on by himself with Kawhi hitting mid-range shots and Pascal Siakam hitting 2 threes down the stretch. That was an exciting stretch of the game, but if it had to be one play, I think it would have to be that Danny Green chase down block. Yeah. You know, Danny Green is an underrated defender, and he's underrated with those swats because he can get up there and block some shots.
I totally agree. I might even swing it to the other team, unfortunately. I had a lot of people in my apartment last night watching the game. It kind of all fell together randomly, but you know, we were half-heartedly watching, and Kenneth Faried gets an insane dunk on Serge Ibaka, trying to get that second chance basket, and it litterally had everybody screaming, "Oh, whoa!" You know, that was nasty. Yeah. So blocks are always nice, whether it's Danny Green or Kenneth Faried. It's definitely a quality doing like that. That's
Yeah, Kenneth Faried's getting revenge from when You know why? Do you know the real reason why Kenneth Faried's career fell off?
Okay, right? What is it?
It was after that Terrence Ross dunk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, our boy, the Raptors legend Terrence Ross, when he ended Kenneth Faried's career, he's finally bouncing back. 5 years later. Regardless, great plays, but not all plays. Could be the Kawhi you do him like that play of the day, and some just make you say, "Oh, jeez." And tonight, the OGs play of the day. Patrick McCaw. We gave him a lot of credit last podcast for the defense he played, and he hustles. He played very solid against the Indiana Pacers. I'll give him full credit on that front. Tonight got 1 minute. 1 minute at the end of the half.
Almost 2 minutes, 1.5.
Inching on 2 minutes. Was guarding James Harden at the end, and it's at both ways OGs, because James Harden, not necessarily the greatest game efficiency-wise, with scoring numbers and stuff, but he had the crossovers. He was shaken by his left, right, and center. Even Austin Rivers was kind of crossing bys up. Lowry took the heat of that a good bit, but Patrick McCaw probably got the worst. James Harden was at the top of the key doing crossover. Patrick McCaw kind of looked like one of those kids, you know what I mean, when you're in grade school or whatever, that's never played basketball before and they're super jumpy and sort of things. They don't really know how to play defense. It's kind of how Patrick McCaw looked. But then he finally recovered. James Harden shot a 3. And Patrick McCaw had a solid recovery. James Harden missed it, but the refs called a foul, and he didn't even touch him on the jump shot. So it was... That whole play made me say, oh, geez.
That's fair. 2 points to bring up on that. One, at least the defense was not as embarrassing as Josh Hart. I think that's the worst display of defense I've ever seen. He decided, if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'm sure you've seen it. Josh Hart of the Los Angeles Lakers decided to some sort of display of cockiness, maybe a psychological game. He puts his hands behind his back in guarding James Harden for maybe 2 dribbles, and when James Harden easily blows by him and gets like a wide open layup, it's like, I didn't understand the purpose of it. That was the worst display of defense. So Patrick McCaw wasn't at Josh Hart level. But also, just on the point of, James Harden is getting more 4-point plays, so the 3-point makes it and one, than any other team in the NBA combined right now. So he's on just an insane level of drawing fouls. And you brought up the point, was he getting fouls last night, that were not deserving? And I actually don't think, maybe for this play, of course, if Patrick McCaw didn't touch him, but I think for the most part what happens is he's elevated his game so much, right? He scores almost all of his points unassisted, that they're calling regular fouls that like maybe they're passing on in other games when they're just trying to let the play, go, like not trying to blow the whistle too much. But most of the time, any call that he gets, there's still contact, right? It's maybe not incredibly hard contact, but if the entire play is revolved around James Harden creating his own shot, that's the reason that they're going to give him these calls, because he's working to get in the lane and make it. I just like his game. I really do. I respect that he's a good player, and the reason I can say that is because the Raptors showed that they can slow him down. 35 points is good. Is a good game, right? It's good defense against James Harden, who's been on a tear recently and is averaging 45 points in January, 45 points per game.
Yeah, sometimes it sucks to watch as a fan, just all the free throws. But yeah, you mentioned it. James Harden's, similar to Kyle Lowry, very, big guys, strong, thick, and they go in the lane, and when they get hit, Kyle Lowry usually falls, but James Harden likes to hold his center of balance and be able to finish through that contact, so it doesn't look like he gets slapped every time, because he doesn't, he flops occasionally, of course, but when he's trying to get those and-ones, he has phenomenal body control, which is the key to finishing through contact. So that's certainly a skill that James Harden has. But that's the OG's play of the day. But before this podcast gets too long, there's definitely a few Damari Carroll Gold Star awards that we got to throw out to this game. So the first one, we've foreshadowed it earlier in the podcast.
Mr. Kyle Lowry.
Certainly. He has done a phenomenal job all season at creating and getting people going, and he had 11 assists tonight, which is awesome. I'm not bashing that side of his game. People are calling Kyle Lowry trash. That's absurd. He still is even if he didn't score a point, he's still a solid point guard with the other things he does in this, for the team. So by no means we're saying Kyle Lowry's trash. We want to get that cleared out of the way, at least from my take. You'll speak on Kyle Lowry as well, but if he's going to be our second best player, even our third best with Pascal Siakam's surgence and phenomenal, elevation of his game. If he's going to be in the all-star conversation, if he's going to be the guy that's looked at Kawhi Leonard's backup, if he's going to be the leader of this team, he needs to be better at scoring the ball. He hit a 3, he hit a couple shots, but 9 points for Kyle Lowry is unacceptable in a game like this. 1 for 6 from the 3-point line, 2 for 9 from the field. He has to stop settling for these 3-point shots when his game isn't going. It's really unfortunate to watch. We need Lowry to be better, And, if he's not doing it, and tonight he didn't really have it on the defensive end either. He's kind of, Austin Rivers made him look like a fool a couple times. Kyle Lowry, I mentioned on the last pod, he kind of elevated his game. He's looking a bit healthier, but he needs to be more consistent. He needs to be better, especially if we want to have a shot at being this top team in the NBA.
Yeah. He's decent, but you can't let past performance speak to what his capabilities are this season. And when you have Norman Powell with 10 points on the game, outperforming Kyle Lowry with only 10 points, right? Kyle Lowry only had 9.
Scoring-wise.
Yes,
Scoring-wise.
It's unacceptable. Yeah. Norman gosh darn Powell. Norman Powell, who had the GoDaddy curse. Norman Powell, who we thought is the absolute worst player in the league. Norman Powell, who we're shaking our heads for giving him a contract.
I never thought that.
I thought it. Everybody else thought it.
Don't put words. Well, everyone bashed me. I was singing Norm's praises.
Norman Powell cannot outscore Kyle Lowry. It's unacceptable. I understand that he's making 11 assists per game, but the point guard role is to score and make assists. And you said it.
In today's
NBA. And who was the point guard for the Houston Rockets? James Harden, right? It's basically James Harden. He's getting just as many assists, and he's scoring 50 points per game or 45 points, whatever it is. You look at any team, the point guard needs to be productive. So it's fine that he's getting 11 assists, but, playmaking is not enough to keep you out there, right? If you're losing games, which they have been, you need a different option. But now the issue is they're benching DeLon Wright. That's their other point guard. And Fred VanVleet has been on a real big slump, right? So he's been giving no productivity. Who do they look to? What is the option here? What is the answer? If Kyle Lowry is still in a slump and Fred VanVleet's in a slump and they're not playing DeLon Wright, what do they do?
Well, it's really interesting. That's why we made a whole video on it. The Raptors are looking for other primary ball handlers in the trade market because of this. Regardless if it's injury or not, we don't really know. The Raptors keep everything under wraps. We try and speculate as best as we can. But whether it's injury or not, they just haven't been consistent. Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry, it's kind of absurd. If you told me that last season, I guess Kyle Lowry has had up and downs in his career, but especially Fred, where Fred has just been, I bashed on Kyle Lowry, but Fred was 0 for 3 from the three-point line tonight, 3 for 9 from the field, 8 points, but really didn't hit the shots you wanted Fred to hit to be an impact on this game. And it's almost as if they're not threats, it feels like, at times. You see him shoot, and there's just no confidence. We see him hit shots occasionally, but when they shoot it, I don't have that certainty or that expectation for the shot to go in. When it goes in, I'm just like, oh, thank God, Which is really something you don't want out of your undersized point guards that are supposed to be three-point threats. So if they can't get it together consistently, I know a lot of people have been saying run Norman Powell at the point guard. Now, I don't really think that's the move, as Norm, despite his scoring ability, his ability to slash, he's not really a creator, and that is
his ball handling is not that great either. It's he has confidence. Yeah. He has a really mean crossover. He does it aggressively. I think that's his move. His go-to move is to do a very hard crossover and cut back kind of randomly into the middle of the key. But he, just as much as it works, he also gets caught in a second defender, gets it stolen on him, falls. He's out of control. I don't think he has the finesse to be a point guard in any sense.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting because obviously Kyle Lowry is super valuable to this team. He's our engine that runs, but we need him to be more of a scoring threat. Maybe we've seen Nick Nurse kind of get him going through stretches of the season, playing him off the ball. And one thing that, call me crazy, I want the comment section to know. I know we're running long in this podcast, and I want you to just, do you think it might be interesting, especially if Fred VanVleet is struggling? He's been struggling consistently playmaking for this team as well, Fred has. Pascal Siakam has really elevated his game as a playmaker and dribbling the ball, being kind of a point forward. If
you're about to say Pascal Siakam should be point guard, I am going to call you crazy.
Not at point guard. Not at point guard. But you remember, obviously not when Hito Turkoglu was on the Raptors, but when he was on that Orlando Magic team, and they let the bigger guy kind of run the ball up the floor, and then Jameer Nelson be more of a scoring threat. I'm not saying, initiate everything through Pascal Siakam.
I'm going to go ahead. I know where you're going. You're crazy. You said call me crazy. You're crazy. Pascal Siakam is not at that point. He has improved ball handling, but that is in no way in the realm of good ball handling.
But he's a scoring threat. No, he's certainly, I think he could do.
He's a slasher. What would happen to his game? What would happen to his transition game if we now ask him to be a primary ball handler.
Not every possession, but through stretches in a game. I wouldn't mind seeing Siakam have the ball more, and then have Kyle Lowry coming off picks, looking for screens and more options. Similar in the vein what the Bucks do with Giannis.
Yes, but you know how long it did. You know how many seasons it took to get Giannis Antetokounmpo to be ready to be a ball handler? His entire career. They were priming him his entire career to become a point guard. That's what Jason Kidd's whole master plan was when he got him in, and that didn't even work out when he initially had him in there. And then it was not until this season that he finally became competent enough to bring up the ball. So
yeah, I'm not saying point guard. Just as a point forward, run more offense through Pascal Siakam, more, and even Kawhi Leonard.
There's a difference.
There's
a difference between running offense through him and letting him bring the ball up the court. I think they already do run offense through him. It's really, if you watch the game,
but he doesn't really initiate much. He's more of a looked at as a guy that we're gonna run an ISO through, but maybe having the ball in the high post and have Kyle Lowry running off screens in the same vein Danny Green is, because Kyle Lowry doesn't get easy shots with this team. All of his threes are dribble pull-up shots off the top of the key. I wouldn't mind seeing Kyle Lowry run off some screens, have some plays where Kyle Lowry isn't the primary ball handler. I think Pascal Siakam could be a solid threat for that, because when Kawhi Leonard has it, he's usually looking to score. I think Siakam as an improved ball handler in the similar vein of Draymond Green and maybe Giannis to a lesser extent, I wouldn't mind the Raptors doing more of those set plays.
All right, it's a great point to end off on. I'm calling you crazy. I'm wondering what the fans or the commenters are going to say. Let us know. Also, let us know what should be done in the point guard front, right? Because obviously there's an issue here. There is an issue that the Raptors have been close in every game. They didn't get blown out by the Boston Celtics. They didn't get blown out by the Pacers. They didn't get blown out. It looked like they would, but they didn't get blown out by the Houston Rockets. They're able to scrape back and make it close at the end of every game, but they just can't finish. And is it on the point guard position? Perhaps. What do you guys think?
Yeah, let us know. You guys are the best for making this far, especially in a 27-minute pod. So check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. You're the best for listening. Any last words?
No, that's it. Cheers. Are we ending it there?